I am dining in. Are you? Afternoon. This is Dining In Club session number one. I'm Dr. Mike Larson, and we're going to review a whole bunch of things. We're going to try to keep all the videos to less than 15 minutes. This is just a support video to go through the slides that have already been sent to you. Now we're going on to the overview. You can read through that. That's what we're reviewing today. Being uncomfortable. One of the things that's really critical about what happens with food is that we've been covering up a lot of emotion with our food. Anytime we feel sad, we can immediately eat, and we can change that emotion very quickly through distraction from the taste of the food, but also through the dopamine rush that comes along with food. And very quickly we can change that sadness into something that feels much better than sadness. And the powerful foods have allowed us to do that. So as we start to pull off the layers of eating, we're going to start exposing some emotion. So that's why in sessions 3 and 4, we're going to really go into those emotional issues and help you understand how to manage emotion more effectively through managing your thoughts. Now we're going on to slide number 5. We have to talk about this natural desire that we have for food. We had to have the natural desire for food. We had to get this natural dopamine rush whenever we ate because it rewarded us for going out and risking our lives to seek food. Today, foods are too powerful. Food companies have figured out how to make these powerful foods that give us such a dopamine rush that we can no longer manage that appropriately. For example, Oreos have a similar dopamine release as cocaine, not as sustained, but similar. And now we're on to slide number 6, which really talks about the motivational triad. Our brain is made to want to avoid pain, to seek pleasure, such as the dopamine rush, or seek sex, seek food, interact with people, etc. We are also trying to do both of those things with the least amount of effort. So now we go on to slide number 7. Historically, that was a balance between seeking food on one hand, but the effort and pain that was involved on the other hand. And so what we have to do is we have to understand that we had this balance between those. We had to put forth a high degree of effort. It was dangerous to do it, and we had to have some pain to seek food, and that was balanced out by our appropriate level of desire for the food overall. That is not what it's like today, folks. Today, we get significant pleasure from food, very high level of pleasure, but the effort that is required to gain it and the pain that is required to gain food are so low that this creates this overwhelming over desire for food. And that's the problem that we have right now. So now the question for you on slide 9 is, do you have a food use disorder? So when we're talking about substance use disorders, or what we used to call addictions, we used to always talk about the 3 C's, okay? Cravings, difficulty controlling, and consequences due to use. So let's go through. Do you have cravings for food? Well, I bet you have severe cravings at certain times. Do you have difficult time controlling your consumption of food? Do you have severe consequences due to your overeating? Do you have knee pain that is increased by 5 to 6 pounds for every pound you're overweight? Do you have diabetes or prediabetes? Do you have other issues, health problems due to your overweight condition? And if the answer is yes, then you likely have a food use disorder. Yay! Okay, but we can overcome that because we're going to teach you how to overcome eating and changing your relationship with food. So what do we need to eat when we're trying to lose weight? That's slide number 10. The answer is we need to eat our own fat. So everyone grab their own fat. We're going to grab our fat a lot in this class. We want to tell our brain this is what we want to eat. We want to eat our own fat. This is a term called dining in. which means that we're dining in our fat. And if we become fat adapted, learning how to access that fat consistently, then we will open up our internal dining room. Okay, so now we're on slide number 11. We're going to talk about Gary Taubes a lot. He had a simple question: what makes us fat? Or what makes our body store fat? His answer was insulin. And so now we're on to number 12. Here's how insulin works. Our body is, when we take in a lot of sugar and flour, and our blood sugar goes up, this is our body recognizing all of a sudden, wow, I've got too much energy floating around. If I don't do something with all this energy that's floating around my body, then I'm going to explode, metaphorically, of course. And so insulin comes in, and it is going to do three things in our body. One, it's going to tell our brain, hey, stop eating, stupid, you've eaten enough. The problem is that over time we've been exposed to insulin so much that we are no longer listening to that voice. Secondly, it's going to take that sugar and store it into our fat system. And third, it's going to block access to our fat. That's a real critical thing, because fat is our energy system, is one form of energy. So we don't want energy released into a system when we already have too much energy floating around. So insulin really stores and blocks access to our fat. So that's what the next slide shows, which is slide number 13, which shows how we're stacking our new fat on top of our old fat. Now, slide number 14 really focuses on what happens when we have insulin being released. So if we look at the purple line, that's kind of this insulin neutral line where we're getting very little insulin release. Once we're above that, we're releasing insulin. That means we're in fat storage mode. Anytime we eat, we're going to be more likely in fat storage mode. If we have diabetes, we're going to stay there for a very long time, if not for the rest of our lives. If we're pre-diabetic, we're going to stay there a lot longer than a person that's not insulin resistant. So this is an idea. We want to get back to being insulin sensitive so we don't stay in that fat storage mode forever and ever and ever. And the ways that we reduce insulin resistance, so now we're on to slide number 15, is we're definitely trying to eliminate sugar in all of its forms, eliminate flour in all of its forms, limit sugary drinks, alcohol, things like that, fruit juices, limit starches depending on our insulin resistance, limit fruits. Fruits, we've been told that fruits are natural sugars, which I'll talk about in a second, but really sugar is sugar, so natural sugar is sugar as well. So some of us have to be very careful with how we eat fruits. We want to limit eating because all eating leads to insulin resistance or insulin release at some level. So yes, we are talking about fasting. Not eating is the only way that we can truly avoid any insulin being released. And so now we're on slide number 16. Some of the things that I want to challenge you about your thoughts about food, things that you have been told that may not be true. And I think that they're not true, so go through those. And I will just emphasize natural sugar is still sugar, people. Be careful with it. Now we're on to slide number 17, which talks about the two-compartment model that Dr. Fung brought up. And it's basically as insulin goes up, think eating sugar in flour, it's turned into glycogen, stored in the liver, and that's our tiny little refrigerator where we have quick access to food. If we have too much food coming in and too much energy coming in, then insulin directs that storage back into our body fat system. Think about the long-term freezer system in your house. And then we can always add more freezers, people. And some of us have a lot of freezers on our body. Let's get access to those freezers. And so as long as we're consuming sugar and flour, we're going to have a hard time accessing anything from our freezer system, and we're just going to be in fat storage mode, adding more food there. Now, when we start talking about fasting, fasting is not starvation. Fasting is a choice. You can start and stop whenever you want. Our bodies were made to fast. So this is slide number 18. We are all descendants of ancestors that could tolerate not eating or fasting. Let's face it, folks, if you were the guy that could only, if you're a descendant from the person that could only go 12 hours without food before passing out, that guy died. It's not you. None of us are descendants of that dude. We'll call him Bob. So now we're on to what happens when we don't eat. So this is again back to that Jason Fung slide, looking at it in a different, when you fast or when you don't eat, insulin will fall. This will signal your body to start pulling energy from your glycogen system first, that refrigerator. Once that fridge is empty, now we get access to our fat. Yes, grab your fat and say, yeah, eat this. That's what we're going to do here. And now we are dining in on our own fat. What a wonderful thing. Now, I'm not going to go through the myths about fasting because those are self-explanatory on slide number 20. Going into more myths about fasting on 21, I just want to comment that you will not eat your muscle. Our body actually has protective mechanisms where it is there to protect our muscle mass. We need our muscle mass to go out and hunt. We need to maintain our endurance. We need to maintain our mental function. So our body has all of those things already figured out, and has a great system that helps us preserve those basic things. Now, I will say, is fasting going to lead to an eating disorder? No, we already have a food use disorder. In eating disorder is something different. It's related to body image. It is not related to eating. It is something different. So we are going to actually change our eating, and that is going to improvement. We are not going to be disordered. Advantages of fasting. This is all straightforward, so we're going through 22 and 23. Now we're getting into the different styles of fasting. Initially, over the next week, I want you to set up your food protocol, and I want you to think about at least a 12-hour fast from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. If we can start to gradually expand that out over the coming weeks so that you can get towards a 16-hour fast and work on low sugar, low flour, whoa, we've got golden things coming for you, and you're going to start getting access to your fat. I just want you to have a good understanding of how much weight you'll lose. If you fasted every day for a week, you would lose 3.5 pounds, because on average, you're going to lose 0.46 pounds per day if you completely do not eat anything. I'll do the math later and in the next class, and we'll go through that. Low sugar, low flour, we definitely want to do that. That works very well with fasting. The more we can be low sugar, low flour consistently, it will allow us to transition into fasting in a very easy way. And so this is something that I want. It'll be effortless for you to fast then, and that's golden. Now, it's important for you to understand how to figure out what is going to impact your blood sugar. The easy way to do it is figure out net carbs. To figure out net carbs, you take total carbs minus dietary fiber. That will equal net carbs. You can find it on every nutrition list. I did one for broccoli. Broccoli's a low glycemic food or a low net carb food with about 1 gram of total net carbs. Apples have natural sugar. Oh my God, they're great for me. Yes, but they do have a lot of net carbs, 21 grams of net carbs, and they are a relatively high glycemic index food. Other things, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, we can go through that. Now, Ben & Jerry's ice cream also has fat, and so the rule is that whenever we're eating fat and sugar or flour at the same time, the insulin is going to direct us to store the sugar and flour along with the fat. That's bad. That leads to high triglycerides, because one sugar is going to be combined with 3 fat molecules, and they're going to be a big thing stuck in your stomach, and they don't want to leave. So let's not do that. Bread, whole white versus whole grain. Everyone thinks whole grain is so great. Yeah, it's about 6 net carbs better. Woohoo! It's still a high glycemic index food. Don't eat bread. Let's go through that. So we've got the net carb guidelines. We want to keep this low. Remember your food portions. And now we're on to slide 30. We're going to talk about your protocols. And so that's one of the things that we want you to do is be creative, understand a protocol. It's your protocol. Try it for 2 weeks, set it up. Use a bunch of I statements to be clear about that. So a sample protocol is on number 32. Wow, we're almost through it. This is great. You're going to get started. You're going to have an understanding of from the handouts about what you're going to do in your protocols. We've got everything being sent out to you. This is so exciting. This is my first live YouTube video that's being uploaded. Yay! Dine in.